To talk about unemployment. Okay, we don't have much time here. Now, if you're 16 years old and above, you're falling into three of these categories. So raise your hand if you think you are employed.
Think. What?
If you have a job, yeah, go ahead, raise your hands, yeah. Okay. How many of you consider yourself unemployed? Okay, a few of you. How many of consider yourself out of the labor force? One. Okay, very good. So now you're wondering which one you should belong. The employee one is no problem. You know, so you have a job, you don't have a job. Now, these two actually there's a distinction here. If you're not looking for a job, you're a full-time student, you're considered out of the labor force. You're not actively seeking. But if you are actively or have been actively seeking for the job in the last 4 weeks, you're not just a couch potato, but you get up, you shave, and you look at newspaper ads, you go out for interview, you're actively seeking, then you're considered as unemployed. But you haven't got a job yet. So you see the difference? So with that, let me ask again. How many of you consider yourself out of the labor force? Okay. So that means you're a full-time student, you're not even looking for a job, period. You're not in the labor force by choice. Okay, next, please copy this down because this is very important. This will come out on your test. So there are two important calculations here. The first one is known as unemployment rate. Second one is known as participation rate. Okay, unemployment rate, and again, remember we're talking about RATE, the rate. That means you have to multiply everything by 100 if you get the decimal places. So the unemployment rate shows that, this is my short form for unemployment, the number of unemployed person divided by the labor force. And what exactly is your labor force? Labor force consists of number of unemployed plus number of unemployed. Okay, and then the other one is called labor force participation rate. So this is basically take the labor force, which is number of people who are employed plus number of people who are unemployed, divided by 16 plus. People who are above 16 years old, okay? Population who are above 16 years old. Because below 16 years old, we call them babies. At least I call them babies because they're not contributing towards the labor force, period. Okay? So, okay, let's look at example, and you have it in your book. So let's look at this calculation quickly. Having this handy, because on your test, I will probably ask you to calculate one or two examples like that. So let's look at this. This is quite recent. The number employed is, if you have your calculator, you might want to take out because I'm going to ask you to calculate the last two. If you're employed, the employed number is 146 million approximately. The unemployed is 9.59 million. Aren't you glad that the number of employed exceeds the number of unemployed? Yeah. It should be so. And then the labor force, that's an easy one. What do? Add the two together, right? To get the labor force according to that. Now, the next one, very important. Not in the labor force, this is given to you. Okay, this number we did not ask you to compute, we give it to you. 92 approximately million. And look at the last one, working age population. How do I get that number? Somebody make an observation and tell me. How do I get the working age population or population 16 plus? It's the same. How do I get that number? Anybody? Okay, Jared, please.
Census Bureau?
It's what?
Did you get it from the Census Bureau?
Oh no, this one you get it by looking at this. I'm asking you a question like from this table, yeah.
Add the labor force and not in the labor force.
Okay, very good. You said it. You're adding labor force plus not in the labor force together to get that. Because a while ago when I asked how many of you are in the are not in the labor force, some of you corrected it and say yes, because you're not looking for a job. You're not considered unemployed. Done. So if your household, well, let's see. If you're a full-time student, you're considered out of the labor force, or not in the labor force. Now, if you're retired, you're in there too. If you're in the military, you're in it too. If you're disabled, not able to work, and over 16 years old, you're in there. Who else should be in there? Housewives, right? Should be also not in the labor force category. So go ahead and calculate this unemployment rate and participation rate. I'm going to ask you to give me an answer. So based on the calculation, we have the formula we have over there. So you should not have any problem because you got all the numbers there. So this one will be, anybody got the number? Can I have it? Okay, so you should have that. And what else? What else? This is rate. So multiply by 100. What do you get?
It's unemployed. That's for the top number.
Yeah.
It would be 9.59 on top.
Did I get the wrong one? Oh, okay, yeah. Thank you. All right. So what should be the number?
9.59
I'm sorry?
on top.
What should be the answer, right?
6.1.
I'm sorry? Doesn't seem right.
6.15.
6.1.
Okay, that's more like it.
Yeah.
6.15. What? What?
Million.
Oh, no, no. Whoa, whoa. Hello. Well, I just said rate. Yeah, we multiply by 100. Yes. Okay, what about the other one? Participation rate. Come on. Okay, this one should be. And population 16 and above, it's the same as working age. So, well, that one I could tell by just looking at it, roughly how much. Okay, so anybody have it?
62.8.
Roughly, okay. Very good. That should be in the 60s, somewhere there. So now you got some idea. That's how you do it. So the important thing is, this is very, very helpful. I hope you write it down. Okay, the working age population is a labor force plus, not in the labor force. So let's write this down. So your working age pop, all pop 16 plus is the same thing. It's equal to labor force plus, not labor force. So please write that down. We just write that computation. Okay, unemployment rate, you could see that it goes up and down, and one thing about unemployment rate is not like inflation. Now remember, in the case of inflation, we say you could get negative inflation rate, which we have a name. Anybody remember that?
Deflation.
Deflation, very good. Now for unemployment, you would never get negative. It's always positive or above zero. So it is. And the other thing that you could see is, you remember the Twin Towers? We nicknamed it Twin Towers during the first and the second oil shock, early 70s and the late 70s approximately. It rises during recession. So usually recessions you have, well, a Great Recession, for example. And how many of you know what was the unemployment rate in Robertson County during the beginning of Great Recession, about 2008? How many of you from Robertson County area? None of you? You're not ashamed, are you? Come on. Okay, do you know the percentage? About 12%, yeah. How many of you from Loringburg? Oh, you are from Loringburg, okay. It was something like 16%, it was very high, yeah. Moore County probably had one of the lowest unemployment rate. So this is a USA participation rate, which what we calculated around 60. So you can see it's pretty consistent there. And of course, include women and men. You could break it down into by ethnicity, by income, by ages, by gender, what have you. Okay, there are three causes of unemployment. One is economic, psychological, and social. Economic, we all know. If there are a lot of unemployment going around, then they start asking the government for support, right? There's such a thing called unemployment compensation. You have to be eligible for it. In order to be eligible for it, you have to prove to them that you have been actively looking for a job and not getting it. So like I say, if you just want to be a couch potato, you're not going out, you're not looking at newspaper, you're not actively seeking, you really should not ask for it, because there's a cost involved at the expense of whose money? Taxpayers. There you have it. So economic cost. Psychological cost basically is talking about, and social, they kind of like together because you have low self-esteem. You've been looking for a job for a long time, so there might be higher chances of having domestic violence or drug abuse or all that sort of things. So it became a social problem. So impact of unemployment is influenced on how long individuals have been unemployed. And there were a few definitions there. Unemployment spell means you fall in and out of unemployment. You get a job and then you don't like it, you get out and get in, get out, get in, get out. The duration of unemployment, basically we say that at least 6 months you're looking for a job, you consider long-term unemployment. And that's kind of like bad news. Chronically unemployed is even worse. It's beyond 6 months. There are two types of workers that we say should be included in the unemployment calculation, unemployment rate calculation. But right now, okay, Jared, a while ago you mentioned BLS, right? It stands for Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is a government agency that computes the unemployment rate. So there are two categories of workers that we think should be included, but they are not. Number one is discouraged workers. People who like to work, but they have not looked in the last 4 weeks. So according to the BLS definition, we say we don't count these people. These people are out. We count them as labor force. In fact, not in the labor force, like some of you who raised your hand earlier, rather than unemployed. But some economists argue that it should be classified as unemployed. Because see, what happened is if you classify it in the numerator on top instead of in the denominator, that unemployment rate will be higher. But if you put it in the labor force, the bigger that number in the denominator, the smaller is the rate. So that's the problem. Now, there's another group of people that, some of you who raised your hand earlier and say you got a job. How many of you who say you got a job, it's a part-time job? Okay. Let's look at what those people say. Involuntary part-time workers. There are a lot of people who want to get full-time job. Can get it. They ended up having a part-time job. The name for it is you are considered involuntary part-time workers. Because you want to get full-time job, but you can get it, but you settle for the second best, which is a part-time job. So the BLS, once again, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, figure for unemployment, look at this example, was 5.2% in 2005. I know it's been a while, but we're trying to give example here. But after you add those two categories of workers in, the unemployment rate is actually a lot higher, 9%. So I think what this economist is trying to criticize is that we should include them in order to be accurate, because we may have underestimated our unemployment rate to be low, but it should be higher. So that's just one view. There are